Welcome to Dark Horizon Creations. I'm Mike. This time we're taking a look at 3D printed weapons for the Star Wars Vintage Collection action figures. Now, if you hadn't already, please follow, like, and subscribe to my social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get a notification of when I post new content. So, standing before you are two of the Galactic Empire's Special Operations Troopers. On the left, you have the Shadow Stormtrooper, and on the right, you have the Imperial Death Trooper. And both of these represent the most elite Special Operations units within the Galactic Empire. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail and history on each of the units that they represent. What I will tell you is that both of them are two different types of Special Operations units. The Shadow Stormtroopers are the primary special operations unit within the Galactic Empire. They would be the equivalent of the Army Special Forces. The Death Troopers, however, are the most elite special operations units within the Galactic Empire. They would be the equivalent of modern day special missions units. Both of these require, select, and utilize an array of small arms that are mission specific. Both the Shadow Stormtroopers and the Death Troopers carry out different types of missions in different environments on different planets and require their weapons set up to support that mission. Now, if you're like me and you collect the Star Wars Vintage Collection action figures, you're aware that we don't always get all of the accessories or weapons that are associated with that character from either the books, the comics, the games, or the movies. We also often encounter weapons that are not symmetrical, that are severely warped because they are made of very soft plastic, almost like rubber, which is difficult, if not impossible, to correct. And that really detracts not just from the toy itself, but it prevents you from utilizing it in a realistic manner, such as with toy photography. So because of these two issues, I began to search eBay and Etsy for a seller who offered 3D printed weapons for the Vintage Collection to augment my action figures and the accessories and weapons which they do include. Primarily, I was looking for the DLT-19D blaster rifle utilized by the Death Troopers. So I came across a seller on eBay called Audes, A-U-D-E-S Workshop, who offered these weapons in 1/18 scale and they're 3D printed. And after several communications with the seller, I ended up ordering a set of both the DLT-19D and the DLT-19X, which we see utilized by Stormtroopers in the Battlefront series of video games. Now, before we look at the 3D printed weapons, I want to bring out one of the weapons included with the Shadow Stormtrooper, which is the DLT-19 Heavy Blaster. Now, this blaster was made famous in Star Wars A New Hope. We see some of the Stormtroopers and the Mos Eisley Patrol utilizing this blaster. It is based upon the MG42 machine gun. It has a very long barrel on it. It's got a bipod mounted underneath it, as you see here. It has iron sights, no optic on it. You've got your pistol grip here. This one doesn't have a trigger guard, as it should. And it's very symmetrical, semi-rigid, no warping, which is really nice. And it seems to be made out of a better plastic than some of the subsequent weapons that are issued with the Vintage Collection. This particular blaster has a lot of nice molded detail in it. You can see the ported barrel, some of the details around the pistol grip, on the receiver, some details there on the stock of the weapon. So overall, it's a really nice weapon. Now, I want to bring out a micrometer and I want to measure this to see what the length of it is. 71, if you guys can see this, 71.1 millimeters. That's the length of this blaster. You guys will forgive me. My hands, my entire body shake constantly, so I can't help that. So now that we've taken a look at this, the DLT-19 that is included with the Hasbro figures, I want to bring out the DLT-19X. Now, this is one of the 3D printed weapons I ordered from Audes. And you can see it's got a lot of nice molded detail in it, more so than the Hasbro weapon, particularly on the upper receiver. the ejection port there, the optic mount, the ported barrel, the power pack there, the muzzle. This side we've got some nice molded detail as well. The print lines are barely visible on this. Nothing to be sanded down. Really, really nice. And it looks to be printed out of semi-transparent PLA. Very symmetrical, no warping. If I stand it up side by side with the Hasbro rifle, it is slightly shorter. So let's bring out the micrometer. See what the length of it is. It is 66.4 millimeters in length. So with the Hasbro weapons, one of the things you don't have to worry about is them breaking. You know, you can take the weapon and manipulate the action figure's trigger hand and it's going to pop out. But you can move it around and things like that and get the action figure to shoulder the weapon, reposition it, whatever you want to do with it. And you don't have to worry about it breaking. These, on the other hand, you do. And you guys can see that it does have a trigger guard, how thin that is. So I want to be careful. I'll place this in his hand. I've got his trigger finger in there because I don't want this to break. But what I do want to do is see if I can get him to a realistic shooting position with this rifle. And let's see if I can extend his arm. It's going to be really tough because of the shoulder pauldron that he's got on. But despite it being slightly shorter, you can see that he can still hold that and has no issues. Now I want to bring out the reason that I ordered these. DLT-19D. This is the one utilized by the Death Troopers. It has a scope on it and 2 glow rods mounted underneath the barrel. Same blaster, ported barrel, things like that. Same pistol grip, same stock. You know, there's not really any difference between it and the DLT-19X. They are the same weapon. You guys can see that there. And if I bring out the Hasbro version, again, you can see it's just slightly longer. And we'll measure it as well. .7 millimeters. And again, it's got a very thin trigger guard. So I want to take the action figure, see if I can pre-position his arms and hands. I don't know if you guys know it, but the fingers on the hands of these Death Troopers are really soft. I think that's partly due to the process that they went through to give them this paint app that they utilize for the carbonized effect of their armor. And that's not really as accurate as I want it, but You can see that he can hold the weapon. And it looks halfway decent. Overall, I think they're nice. They do exactly what I want them to do. I may end up painting them. One thing I will say is that because of the shoulder pauldron, it's really difficult to get them into an accurate shooting position. And on the Death Troopers, that may be something that I actually cut off and remove from some of them, because not all of the Death Troopers have that shoulder pauldron. It's only the squad leaders and the officers. Certainly the weapons are more fragile because they are 3D printed versus being ABS injection molded plastic like this. If you don't want to go with 3D printed weapons, another possibility is to go back and look at the Star Wars Power of the Force toy line from the mid-90s to look for accessories and weapons that you can utilize with modern vintage collection scale action figures. So there you have my review of the 3D printed Star Wars blasters by Odds Workshop.